Hey, shalom, shalom. Kahala, Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushai, Bashem, Rakakadash, Daman to the apostles, elders, great millstone, and will. And salutations to the brethren on the four corners of the earth, pushing the word in truth and sincerity. This is Iraq with Great Millstone, Wisconsin. I just want to say a few words on the Brexit situation, because what we are seeing right now is prophecy coming to pass. You know, this is a prophecy that rings loudly in the scriptures, man, pursuant to Daniel, the 2nd chapter, and the 31st verse on down. You know, basically that's what we are witnessing as Brexit is leaving the EU, you know, because it's something that was established called the European Economic Council, you know, that was established in 1957 after NATO was established, you know. And I believe NATO was established in 1949, if I'm not mistaken. But the EEC was created, or the EU was created to bring forth economic wealth and prosperity to the European nations after World War II. And now, after 47 years of not Israel, but 47 years of Britain's membership in the EU, they decided to part ways because they no longer see it as a benefit to their economy, you know. And the scriptures talk about that, you know, the toes that are partly strong and partly broken, man. You know, you're gonna have weak countries and you're gonna have strong countries, you know. But the thing is that Britain was number 5 on the European Union's best economies list. So this was a toe of iron that left the EU, man. You know, this is a toe that's broken off from the EU, you know. And I'm gonna get Daniel the 2nd chapter in a little bit. I just want to read a little bit on matter of fact. Let me read this Revelation 19:10. It says, "And I fell at his feet to worship him, and he said unto me, See thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Yahushai. Worship the Most High, for the testimony of Yahushai is the spirit of prophecy." So what you're seeing now is that everyone who supposedly reads the scriptures, calls themselves a pastor or a minister or a prophet of the Lord, you know, they have to have the testimony of Yahushai first, and that is prophecy. So when you look out into the world and you see things happening, it's running parallel with the prophecies in the Bible, man. You know, and that's how you know the spirit of Yahushai is running around in the world, man, shaking things up. You know, just like the Brexit, whole Brexit ideal, man. So this is the Brexit from the Wikipedia. It says a portmanteau of British and exit, compound word, is the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the United Union, from the European Union, Slovakia, following a June 2016 referendum in which 52% voted to leave and 48% voted to stay. The UK government formally announced the country's withdrawal in March 2017, beginning the Brexit process. The withdrawal was delayed due to deadlock in the UK Parliament. Followed the general election, Parliament ratified the withdrawal agreement, and the UK left the EU at 11 p.m. Greenwich, I think it's GMT, which is Greenwich time. I can't remember what the M stands for. It says on 31st of January 2020. This began a transition period that is set to end on December 31st, 2020, during which the UK and EU will negotiate their future relationship. The UK remains subject to EU law and remains part of the EU customs union and single market during the transition, but is no longer part of the EU's political bodies or institutions. So when you look at this, right, the EU is holding Britain to its single market, right? Which, let's just get what that single market is, man. The European single market. So the European single market, or internal market, or common market, is a single market which seeks to guarantee the free movement of goods, capital, services, and labor, the 4 freedoms, within the United Union. Within the European Union. The market encompasses the EU's 27 member states and has been extended, with exceptions to Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway, through the agreement of the European Economic Area, to Switzerland through bilateral treaties, and to the United Kingdom through the duration of its transition period as specified in the Brexit withdrawal agreement. So what you have here is that all the EU nations had the single market, that the economy would all thrive together as if it's one big country, and that gave some countries that had weak economies a chance to survive and not collapse economically, so they can be just as strong as the countries that have great economies, so to speak. But the thing is that you have those countries that have great economies that are tired of being weighed down by the smaller countries. Having all the countries together are giving everyone a larger business reach, which allows greater circulation of money and things of that nature to come into their own prospective countries. But you have countries such as Britain that are tired of being weighed down by the EU, and that's exactly what you've seen with the Brexit on the 31st. They left so they can boost their own economies without having to rely on the EU's rules and regulations and having to prop up other countries. And that's division, man. That's the division that the Lord has set in the world. But there's also the prophecy of Daniel, the second chapter, man, starting to unfold, because once you look at that, you look at Brexit, now you start looking at other countries. Now that they see that it is possible to defect from the European Union, other countries are going to want to defect as well, man. And what do you think is going to happen? That whole European Union is going to break apart piece by piece, just like the toes in Daniel's second chapter. It says, "Thou, O king, sawest and behold a great image." Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. "Thou, O king, sawest and behold a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breasts and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay." So when you look at the statue, it was a statue of Nebuchadnezzar, and this statue had different metals on it, which represented the quality of different kingdoms throughout the world. Which those four kingdoms were Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And this stone that was cut out without hands is Yahushua, man. The cornerstone, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay. So his spirit, his spirit broke up the toes that were of iron and clay, man. So what that's telling you is that certain things are going to be broken apart, and those toes of iron and clay represented the divided kingdoms, of Western Europe, which would be the European Union, and now they're breaking into pieces with that first piece that broke off, which would be Britain or England. It says, "And break them to pieces. There was the iron and clay and brass and silver and gold broken to pieces together." So after this European Union collapse, you're going to have something else happen, man, which the whole system is going to be broken down. All the influence that these past empires had is going to be crushed, because the European Union was basically Rome being brought back together. Because Rome had tributaries, and they basically had everything set up as one global economy as well. It says, "And became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them." So basically the old establishment was done away with, and this is a future prophecy here. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain. And that stone that smote the image, like I said, was Yahushua, and that great mountain represents the kingdom of Israel, man, because Yahushua is that foundation, that cornerstone that's laid. Like when you build a building, you put the cornerstone there, and then you lay the foundation, and then you build the building from the ground up. And that's what you're seeing the mountain do after the societal system is destroyed. You know, it says, and filled the whole earth. And when we are brought into the kingdom of the Most High, the kingdom of heaven, we're going to have the whole earth under subjection. It says, this is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven, the power of heaven, hath given thee a kingdom, power and strength and glory, which was Babylon. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee. And that kingdom was the Medo-Persian Empire. And another third kingdom of brass, which that kingdom of brass was the Greek Empire, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron. Now, when you look at these different metals, not only do you look at the quality of the metals, but the quality of the metals represent the qualities of the empires, with Babylon being not the biggest empire, but the greatest. Just because the empires got bigger and bigger throughout time doesn't mean that they were getting greater and greater in terms of quality of life, quality of people, quality of materials and resources that were used in those empires. All those resources were being brought low. It says, and the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, which the Roman Empire did. And as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise, which it did, man. It broke all the nations in pieces, and bruised them and left them with scars, man. That's why all the nations were brought tributary into Rome, and became this empirical economy, just like the European Union. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay, and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be no strength, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron. For as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. So you see that the kingdom shall be divided in what? Divided in economic viewpoints, cultural viewpoints, divided in as many more ways than one when it comes to countries having inner working dealings with other countries, fusing economies and fusing political views and things like that nature. It says, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. In those strong countries, which are Britain, Spain, France, I think Switzerland, Germany. I think those are the top five economies were the top five economies in the EU. And then you have the other five top countries in the EU, and then you have the rest, which would be the clay, and those are the countries that aren't as economically strong, And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with seed of men. But they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And that's what's happening. You have, the iron, then you have clay. When you're molding clay around something, yeah, it sticks, So when they created this European Union, it stuck for a time, but after it hardened and it became, it became more solid after it hardened, what happens when it's hardened? It's easier to break apart. And that's exactly what you're seeing now. That first toe that broke off was the British Empire, and this is only what's going to happen more and more as you're going to start to see this more and more as time drags on, man, because more and more countries are going to leave, more and more countries are going to have disagreements, and they're just going to say, you know what, I don't even need you guys anymore. I don't need this pact or this union or this covenant that we have with each other. Britain left, so can we. We can thrive ourselves. You know, and that's the mindset that other countries are going to start developing, which is going to lead to the downfall of Europe as a whole. You know, this is Mark chapter 3 verse 24. It says, "And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand." You know, and we just read in Daniel 2 that the kingdom is divided. You know, and now it's breaking apart. What happens to the statue once the stone breaks the foundation, which is the feet? You know, what happens to the rest of the statue, which has nothing to stand on? It topples over and it breaks in pieces. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but hath an end. And that end, going back to Daniel chapter 2, and going back to Daniel chapter 2 verse 34, thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. That's the end that we're seeing right now, man. So they can't stand, but they have an end, and that end is now manifest. I just want to say a few words on the Brexit situation, man, because it's a heavy prophecy, man. And that's showing us that we're closer and closer to the end of this, at the end of this cesspool we call, society, man. And that's all around the world on all levels. That we are at the end of this thing, So things like this should be a faith booster to brothers, man. Things like this should spark fire in your spirit even more, man. So with that, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachak Kodash, the honors to the apostles and elders of great millstone who rule well, and salutations to the brethren on the four corners of the earth, pushing the word and truth and in sincerity. Shalom.